In a dramatic and defiant shift, the West African nation of Burkina Faso has welcomed Russian forces onto its soil, a move that has sent tremors across Western capitals. Once a reliable ally of France and the United States in the fight against terrorism in the Sahel, Burkina Faso has now turned eastward, inviting Moscow into a region long dominated by Western influence. For decades, the Sahel was framed by Europe and the US as a frontier of global security, with their military presence justified under the banners of counter-terrorism and humanitarian support. Yet, this latest development signals a clear rejection of that narrative. With Russian boots now officially on Burkinabè ground, the message is unambiguous. The post-colonial order is being dismantled, and Burkina Faso is taking the lead in forging a new chapter of African autonomy and alignment. This isn't simply a tactical partnership, it's a symbolic upheaval that reflects Africa's shifting allegiances in a rapidly multipolar world. To fully understand the significance of this geopolitical shakeup, one must examine Burkina Faso's tumultuous past. Formerly known as Upper Volta, the country was a French colony until gaining independence in 1960. Since then, it has endured a cycle of political instability, coups, and social unrest. The nation has long been among the poorest in the world, plagued by weak institutions and a chronic lack of development. In recent years, the situation became dire as Islamist insurgencies swept across the northern and eastern regions. Terrorist attacks became frequent, entire villages were emptied, and state control diminished. Nearly 2 million citizens were displaced, and faith in Western-backed security efforts began to crumble. Despite years of French and American military presence, jihadist groups continued to grow in strength. To many Burkinabè citizens, the promises of peace and development offered by the West were not just unfulfilled, they were empty. This growing frustration came to a boiling point in 2022. Thousands took to the streets in the capital, Ouagadougou, and across the nation in mass protests against the French military. Demonstrators denounced what they called France's neocolonial behavior and demanded an end to foreign military interference. Graffiti scrawled on walls read, "France dégage," France, get out, and Russian flags began appearing at rallies, a sign of shifting sympathies. The West's model of engagement, marked by paternalistic diplomacy, strict aid conditions, and perceived disregard for local voices, had lost its legitimacy. Amid this unrest, a young military officer named Captain Ibrahim Traoré seized power in a coup, promising to reclaim Burkina Faso's sovereignty and chart a new course. Traoré, unlike his predecessors, looked not to Paris or Washington, but to Moscow for support. Russia's entry into Burkina Faso's affairs marks not just a strategic maneuver, but a deep ideological turn. While Western powers often condition their aid and military assistance on political reforms and democratic principles, Russia presents itself as a partner with no strings attached. The Kremlin's approach is transactional. In return for loyalty and access to resources, Russia offers arms, security expertise, and political backing. For many African leaders fed up with Western double standards, this is an attractive bargain. In Burkina Faso's case, reports suggest that Moscow has sent military advisors, supplied arms and drones, and possibly deployed mercenaries associated with the Wagner Group, a controversial Russian paramilitary organization known for its role in other African nations. The Wagner Group is no stranger to Africa. In Mali, Libya, the Central African Republic, and Sudan, its operatives have become key players in local conflicts. Though accused of human rights abuses and illicit resource extraction, Wagner has built a reputation for delivering what many Western missions have not: visible results. In Mali, Wagner forces helped reclaim territory from Islamist militants that French troops had failed to secure in over a decade. Now, as Wagner reportedly extends its reach into Burkina Faso, it signals not only Moscow's growing confidence, but a recalibration of African security paradigms. Russia is not offering democracy, it is offering power. And for leaders like Traoré, surrounded by chaos and disillusionment, power is precisely what's needed. For France, this development is deeply unsettling. After being expelled from Mali and losing influence in the Central African Republic, Paris had hoped Burkina Faso would remain a loyal partner. Instead, it now faces a complete diplomatic rupture. French military bases have been dismantled, and anti-French sentiment continues to rise. What was once France's strategic backyard is slipping away. The symbolic blow is immense. A former colony, once part of the so-called Francafrique network, is now embracing France's chief geopolitical rival. This trend, if it continues, could spell the end of France's dominant role in West Africa altogether. The United States, though less entangled historically, is equally concerned. Washington sees Russia's advance into Africa not only as a threat to regional stability, but also as a direct challenge to the international order. American officials warn that Russian involvement could destabilize fragile democracies, expand Moscow's access to vital mineral resources, and create intelligence gaps that compromise anti-terror efforts. In particular, U.S. strategists fear that African nations could be used as launchpads for disinformation campaigns, sanctions evasion, or covert operations. Burkina Faso's move is thus viewed not as an isolated incident, but as part of a broader Russian strategy to undermine Western influence in the global South. Still, perspectives on the ground in Africa are more complex. Many Burkinabe citizens and African observers argue that the West has had decades to prove its commitment to African development and security, and has failed. Despite billions in aid and military training, conditions have worsened in many parts of the Sahel. Russia, whatever its flaws, is offering something different: respect for sovereignty, quick results, and non-interference in domestic politics. While Western analysts decry the authoritarian tendencies of Russian-backed regimes, many locals view the Western approach as hypocritical, supporting corrupt elites while preaching democracy. For countries like Burkina Faso, Russia's support feels less like a risk and more like a gamble worth taking. That said, serious dangers remain. Russia's interest in Burkina Faso is not charitable. The Wagner Group, like other Russian actors, seeks economic gain, particularly through mining concessions. Burkina Faso, rich in gold and other minerals, may find itself in a new form of dependency if it cannot control the terms of engagement. Moreover, Wagner's presence often brings reports of civilian abuses, lack of accountability, and secrecy. Without transparency, Burkina Faso risks trading one form of foreign control for another. Over-reliance on Russian military power could also weaken democratic institutions and make peaceful governance more difficult in the long run. Regionally, the impact of this alignment could be transformative. If Burkina Faso's pivot to Russia results in improved security or political stability, other nations may follow suit. Already, countries like Niger, Guinea, and Chad are observing closely. A domino effect could redraw alliances across the continent, with lasting consequences for global diplomacy. On the flip side, if the Russian partnership fails, leading to human rights violations, economic exploitation, or further instability, it could backfire badly, leaving Burkina Faso more isolated and vulnerable than ever. For now, hope and uncertainty coexist. The Burkinabe government speaks of liberation, pride, and a fresh start. Public rallies show citizens waving both national and Russian flags, cheering what they see as a historic rejection of Western domination. State media portrays the new alliance as a rebirth. Yet beneath the surface, the same deep-rooted problems remain: terrorism, poverty, political fragility, and social division. Whether Russia can offer real solutions or merely a temporary sense of control remains to be seen. What is clear is that Africa is no longer content to be a passive ground in the global power game. Countries like Burkina Faso are making bold decisions, asserting their independence, and reshaping the future of global alliances. As Western diplomats recalibrate and Russian operatives settle in, we are witnessing a historic shift, one that will define African politics for decades to come. This is more than a security deal. It is a loud, defiant message. Africa is rising on its own terms. The coming months will be pivotal. Will the alliance deliver tangible benefits? Will Burkina Faso manage to strengthen its institutions and protect its people? Or will it slip deeper into dependence and division? No one can predict the outcome. But one thing is certain: the world is watching, the balance is shifting, and the old rules no longer apply. As Burkina Faso steps boldly into a new chapter of its national journey, the stakes could not be higher. With Russian forces now on its soil and Western influence rapidly fading, the country finds itself at the center of a global power struggle that extends far beyond its borders. Whether this gamble will bring security and sovereignty, or deeper dependence and instability, remains to be seen. But what cannot be denied is the historical significance of this moment. For the first time in generations, Burkina Faso is choosing its path on its own terms. This is not just about geopolitics or military strategy. It's about identity, dignity, and the right of African nations to define their own future. The world is watching closely, and as alliances shift and empires tremble, one message rings clear from the heart of West Africa. The age of foreign control is ending, and the era of African agency is rising. Burkina Faso didn't just welcome troops, it made a bold geopolitical statement. As Russia tightens its grip and the West scrambles to respond, Africa is no longer just a continent of resources. It's the new battleground for global influence. Is this the rise of a new Cold War? Or just the beginning of something even bigger? Stick around to find out. And if you want more sharp, no-fluff analysis, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon. Because the real game, it's only just begun.